because he's not even on here.
Hi, good morning. Today is May 9th, 2019. We're going to begin today's work session. If we could start by standing for the pledge. Ryan, you want to start us?
I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, first item on the work session today was the Advisory Committee Annual Report for Anti-Bias Task Force. We are getting a late start, and Connie Lissandro has agreed to come another day to do that, so we appreciate for her doing that. So we will start off with the Recreation Advisory Committee, and we have Brian Mills here with us, so
Okay.
we will turn it over to you for the annual report.
Okay, well, we're not, I'm not doing an annual report, actually.
Okay,
That's not
okay,
what we're
so
doing.
go ahead, go ahead.
All right, what I wanted to propose or give you guys an idea about, okay, is a way to kind of plug the hole in the recreation fund right now. Because as you know, we have no money, and we haven't had money for the better part of the last 3-4 years, okay? So, what happened was, I was away for a weekend and saw something in a town in Pennsylvania, and I thought
have
it
to
was
be louder.
something, and I thought it was something that we
Mic is
could,
here.
and I thought it was something that maybe we could bring here, okay, to help get money into our coffers.
Yeah, Bob, please.
Okay, so, as you know, we've had no money, therefore we can't do any kind of playgrounds.
Capital improvements.
Capital improvements, projects, what have you, okay? And the only way that we can get money is through the sale of new homes, right, because there's a fee attached to that, or a matching grant, which in order to have a matching grant, you have to have money, so if you don't have money, well, then you can't get a matching grant, you're kind of stuck in this mess here. So over the last couple of years, we've spoken with the town attorney's office about ways that we can try to get money. They've said, well, elected people can't solicit for money. We know that a lot of companies have money, so how do we get that in here? So that's the background behind this. So let me kind of give you an idea of what I saw out in Doylestown, Pennsylvania, okay? They created this thing, it's called the Kid Castle. It was up for about a number of years, and what happened was it kind of fell into disrepair. And there was no money to fix it, okay? So a private nonprofit was formed with the residents of the town to raise money and repair this thing. It's closed right now for repairs. They raised on their own about $650,000, $691,000 as a matter of fact, to build this thing. So I got pictures here of this. I also printed out part of their website here so you guys can kind of see what has been done. But this is a partnership between the town and this private organization.
Basically a foundation.
Exactly.
Okay.
So, as we have now, if you go out to EPCAL, right, there's property out there that's designed for park, right, for kids' parks. Well, we have no money to get those parks.
Not yet.
So, there's no money.
No, we have a community benefit zone agreement that we're working on where there might be
Yeah.
some money coming into the coffers, but I agree with the not-for-profit idea because
Yeah.
the not-for-profit is eligible for grant money and the town would then have to match that money. But I was talking to Jim about this the other day, because I know that's very important to him, is and the whole board, the parks, and how we're gonna do it, and we were talking about some of the projects that Jim's wanted to do over the last 12 years in the parks, and how that community benefit zone money, or community benefit package might be utilized for that. And Tim, I think you can agree in listening to the recreation department for the last years, for the few years that
Absolutely.
you've been here. So there might be some money coming in, but
Well, what we're
Let you
talking about
continue.
doing
Yeah.
is creating a nonprofit that can raise money to build these parks on that land, which is obviously town land. So, just to give you guys an idea, and you can kind of scroll through here, the way that this has been funded. I mean, these companies on Route 58 have bought, you can buy a piece of equipment, you can buy a part of a fence, you can buy, Catherine was telling me, bricks, whatever. The way that the schools have done this to build these types of facilities. Well, I'm just trying to figure out a way that we can maybe do that here, because I've been on this recreation board for, I want to say, about a decade, and nothing's happened in a decade.
We're getting
So-
It's frustrating.
So I'm at my wit's end, okay? And the rest of the board is at their wit's end. We all feel like our time has been wasted enormously. So we're at a point now where it's like, look, let's see if we can come up with a plan here to try to get some money to work with the town and see if we can do something. So
great
I'm on the
idea.
board of the Chamber of Commerce. the Chamber of Commerce wants to be involved with this as well, obviously. And so the actual particulars, I don't have those particulars, but really what I wanna do is see if the town is even open to doing something like this.
Absolutely.
Because if they're not, again, we don't wanna waste our time.
Right.
But I know that Tim has been working with the Recreation Board, Catherine works with us now, you guys know what we deal with, and we're just trying to figure out a way to just do more with less, basically.
You're more,
So-
the grants are, not-for-profits or have a better chance of getting grants, and if the town matches, then I think it's a great way to start. So you gotta get an accountant, obviously, and you gotta set up the 501c3.
Well, we can set it up, very easy to set up, costs $300 to, typically a bank will front you the money for that, not an issue. And, we kinda wanna put this whole thing together and
Like
get
it.
the particulars, but, like I said, and I can, obviously submit that to you, to see if the town wants to do some kind of a public-private partnership
Well,
to try to raise money.
we've been
Great idea.
talking about that for a while.
John was. Anne Marie's coming. So part of the question
Yeah.
is the legality of it. So actually asked Anne Marie Prudenti to come in.
Oh, good.
She's our town attorney.
Hey, Anne Marie.
About setting up an outside foundation that would then donate to the town.
And it's actually something that we had Anne Marie come in and talk to the Alternative Transportation Committee years ago when we were trying to
you go.
develop the recreation trail. And, it was recommended at that time that they start a not-for-profit or they get a not-for-profit to
Yeah,
raise
it-
the money.
So the,
If it's a separate entity, separate and apart, a government entity such as the town, and even their committees may not solicit donations. And Councilman Hubbard and I worked on that a lot with the 225th
Anniversary celebration,
anniversary
right.
celebration. If a separate entity does fundraising and wants to donate to the town, under Town Law 64 may accept those donations.
Okay, but here's gonna be, okay, but I'm gonna back this up for 1 second.
Go ahead.
The nonprofit is not going to raise $500,000 and donate it to the town, for the town to decide how they wanna spend that money.
No, you
That's
can
what
donate.
I wanna make sure that we get
As
that.
the foundation, you can
Yeah.
donate what you want. So if you raise whatever, say you wanted to raise $60,000 to put in a particular player, the
Okay.
foundation would raise that money. You can purchase the equipment itself, you can work with the town, as far as, because the town can also do part of it, and then you can donate the particular equipment and where you would like to see it go, then the town accepts it as such.
And has to use it for that purpose.
And, well, yes,
that how it works?
yes.
Well, it is permissible under the law for the town to accept a donation wherein the donation has set forth certain conditions on how you spend it. For instance, the town did that through Councilman
Yeah.
Wooten
The dog.
for
The dog shelter,
MTAS.
sure.
Oh, okay.
Well, I'm just gonna say, I know Brian's frustration. I serve on the
We go
rec
through it all the time, you
advisory.
and I.
And, it's a great committee and they're, constantly trying to come up with ideas, but there hasn't been any money. So when Brian brought this to the group, you were trying to be creative and think outside of the box, and I think this is workable. The school district built all of the playgrounds on donations. I was telling the committee that at the school, like at Riley Avenue, people donated a brick, and then they did a whole brick walkway, and that was how they raised the money. So, I'm happy that you're saying we can get this done.
And
Well,
And that's what we do with the fighter jets too,
they
where
can get
people
it
were
done,
buying
and
bricks.
I think the town will
That's
be
what I mean.
more than happy to accept the donation,
And
even
we
with a
have in the
condition
past,
on
and we
how
certainly
it's
will in
spent.
the future.
Yes.
Right.
And I think for, it would be separate and apart from the committee, but just to go back to
Yes.
the recreation committee a little. I know that I had spoken to a couple people and, they were like, well, we can only do what comes through park and rec fees. But there is some money that was set aside this year for capital improvement, and that was to go to some of the park facilities. So I think that should go back to recreation for this year, because I think part of the charge of the committee is to look at what's going through recreation and to decide where the priorities are
Yeah.
for the parks, and to make recommendations on some of the upgrades. Because I think for this year, tentatively is to redo some of the tennis courts, handball courts, things like that. So that would need to go back to the committee for recommendations on
Yeah, and it will,
priorities.
and, there's always been, a split between the priorities of the rec department and the priorities of the committee, that's always been a bone of contention, so whatever, we'll deal with
Okay.
that, that's not an issue. This is just separate and apart from that, trying to figure out a way to say, look, you know what, let's kind of go above and beyond, other towns have done it, we all know that sitting around this table, so let's figure out a way that maybe we can kind of bring that concept here, and do something for the community.
Well, I think you get a lot more, I sit on a lot of these type of committees, but I think you get a lot more if it's earmarked, if people know they're donating for a specific purpose,
I agree
and not
with
just a general.
Yeah, yeah.
You know, if you wanna, if I wanna see you wanna attack a certain project, or whether it's an overhaul or something new, or new concept, if that's, people would feel more comfortable donating for that purpose, than let's just say, a general rec fund, I'm just gonna throw something in.
Well, exactly, and that's the whole idea behind creating this organization would be that it's gonna be outlined exactly how this money is going to be used. I mean, this is what it's for. It's not gonna be like we're raising this for playground equipment, and then all of a sudden we decide to do, resod a field.
Right.
Well, it's the same as we do with Townscape, right? Townscape
Mhm.
is a not-for-profit, but still, helps do stuff. So I applaud you for this.
Yeah.
I think this is terrific.
All
And
right,
I
so-
think people like
yeah.
to donate to something for children. People like to donate to a playground.
Oh, yeah.
Businesses and such. We've talked about this. I was there when I'm on the chamber with Brian, so we talked about it there too. I think it's a win-win.
All right, so we'll come up with the particulars, we'll give it to you guys, and then we'll basically start the process. Go ahead, Tim.
Brian, just so that people know, years ago, the Rec Advisory Committee was formed to decide how to spend money that came in through subdivisions that were being built in the town. I
Right.
believe the town received $2,000 per lot, per subdivision, and that money was put in for park and rec fees. And back in the '80s, late '80s and early '90s, there was a healthy amount of money in that.
Oh, yeah.
And a lot of things were accomplished, but those things that were accomplished need upkeeping, and that's really where
That's
we're
the
at
money.
now, because all the pocket parks and different facilities that were updated and done are now starting to need repair and replacement, and we don't have that that source of funding coming in anymore because the building is down.
But
Yeah.
it still can be captured in the general fund. It doesn't, all of it doesn't need to go through, especially if the funds are not coming in to help maintain the parks. I think it needs to be a priority in the budget, and I think it needs to be funded through the general fund for some.
I don't
yeah.
disagree with that, but I'm just, so that people understand that we had a lot of money years ago to do these things, and now that money's not there, and we need to repair and replace, so that's what we're up against, and this would be an ideal situation.
Yeah, and to the pocket parks too, and I know Jim has mentioned this before, and it makes, total sense. Obviously, like, any kind of projects that we're talking about would be, I would guess, would be either at EPCAL out there in
Mhm.
Calverton where it needs a lot, or upgrades even in Stotsky. The
Mhm.
problem with the pocket parks, and we've talked about this, is like, how do you upkeep all these little things, like, if it only benefits a core group in the community on this end of town or that end of town, but you got these two other major areas that you could really do
So
something.
your flagship parks deserve the most
Right.
attention.
Exactly,
Absolutely.
bar none, that's.
Well,
really
Larry
agree with
Williams
that,
asked
so.
for that toddler playground at Stotsky for about 10 years at least.
Brian.
He was.
It's about 10 years, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, the playground, the little one that's out there, which, by the way, if you ever go out there on the weekends, is used all the time, with little toddlers out there. But, originally, we had said to Ray, look, we gotta do something more than this. And, but as you know, if you get an injection of $100,000 right away, everyone's got their hand in the pot because there's never any money there,
Oh, you
you know?
spent three times, right?
Oh, God, easily, so.
If what's important, you might not be important to the next guy sitting next to you.
Right, but if you got 600,000, well, that can go a long way, so.
I think it's a great idea. I mean, I'm in talking to the organizers of the Brian Simonson
Oh,
dinner
yeah,
that they're
sure.
having next weekend. I think they have 600 people that are expected to be there.
Yep.
So there are people that will put up money for a good cause, and, the master plan really restricts the amount of residential development that can happen in the town. So it's the large vacant pieces that could be subdivided and made for residential dwellings are few and far between. So we gotta either allow more subdivisions or come up with alternative
Or
solutions.
come up with alternative solutions, and so
Yeah.
this is an idea that, I think might,
I think this
Work
is
for you guys.
I think this is terrific. 10 years of frustration.
Oh, God,
has-
Laura, you have
has-
no idea.
I know. Has brought you here, so I think that this is, like I said, I applaud you for doing this. I think, whatever we can do to assist you, And we support that you're, you know, going through with the foundation, and I'm sure that you will have ideas that you wanna do with the parks, and we look forward to hearing all of them.
All right, we'll
And
start
by the
to
way, I
get
think
going.
we're finally getting that one playground out of storage, right?
Yes.
Where is it in storage, by the way? Do you know where it is?
It's
I
up
don't-
at Stotsky in the
Is-
building.
Is that that thing that's out there by like,
With the
It's a-
in that old
engineering,
dirt
yeah,
lot by Field 6 out there?
the engineering
no, no,
department
no,
took
that's
it
the
apart
PAL
and
shed.
checked
Oh,
it.
okay.
It's
Okay.
a small playground for 5 to 12. It's not,
Okay.
it's not the toddler.
Okay.
But they were missing
Playground.
parts, so I guess they're
No,
finding.
the engineering department
Yeah.
checked it, it's
Isn't
not
it-
missing
wasn't-
parts.
wasn't missing
It's
parts.
good,
Good
nope,
now.
it's good and ready to
sitting
go. Anne Marie, did you have one more thing to say? We're good, okay.
All right, guys.
All right, Brian,
Cool.
thank you very
We'll
much,
give you
appreciate
updates.
this, very
Okay.
good.
All right, thanks for
Have a
taking the
good
time,
day.
I appreciate it.
Because.
Are you taking this? Can we keep this, Brian?
Yes, that's for you.
Okay.
No.
All right, and
Lazy
now we will
lady.
move on to special permit application for Nextera.
See that specific thing. Like, we had no problem raising money to do all the parks. We couldn't make one vote.
We never put it in.
I just can't say.
Yeah, well, that was what the problem was.
Okay, great, then I'll grab here.
Negotiation back and forth with the company.
Thank you.
So we don't even essentially own it. We don't
No,
afford it.
that had to be taken care of before. So they went back and forth with the.
Good morning, everybody. I'm just gonna have everybody, we do a live feed on everything, so if we can have everybody just introduce themselves. There's cameras this way, so you don't have to turn or anything.
Okay, Stephen Lo Squadro, attorney for Nextera/Long Island Solar. Good morning.
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 Good morning, everyone. Thanks for having us here. My name is Michael Dowling. I'm the project director at NextEra Energy, and I'm working on the Calverton Solar project.
Good morning, my name is Bill Bohr, I'm with Nextera as well, and I'm project manager for environmental services.
Thank you. All right, Greg, did you wanna
Get parts.
start?
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, so, what I did, again, I've just distributed a packet,
Thank
I've
you.
got my staff report.
Thank you.
And I've just kind of pared down some of the major points to a 2-page bullet point so we can go through it pretty
Okay.
quickly. We've received a special permit and a site plan application to construct a 22.9 megawatt commercial solar farm on 2 parcels. One parcel being an 82.4 acre parcel located on Edwards Avenue, which is the current site of the Long Island Sports Park facility, as well as a 115.1 acre parcel, which is located on River Road. I'm gonna refer to them as the eastern parcel, which is Long Island Sports Park, and the western parcel, for the other parcel. They require a special permit within the industrial C zoning use district, as well as site plan approval. In terms of SECRA, the proposed action is a type 1 action pursuant to SECRA, with mandatory review required among involved agencies. Planning staff recommends that the town board circulate a request to assume lead agency status, as the town board is responsible for granting a special permit, which is sort of the gateway into the process. Without the special permit, site plan review can't go forward. So we're gonna recommend that the town board circulate that request. In terms of the use of the 2 parcels, the eastern parcel is presently used as I said, Long Island Sports Park, which is an outdoor sports and recreation facility. The western parcel was previously farmed. It's noted that it's not currently enrolled in any New York State Ag and Markets programs.
You know how long ago it was found?
I don't have any of that information. I looked at, in town building records, I couldn't find anything on the parcel, so I really don't
Sure,
have that
yeah.
information. In order to execute this project, the applicant will need to enter an easement agreement with the town of Riverhead to put their utility connection underneath Edwards Avenue. In my staff report, I had detailed the requirements for an underground utility profile to identify any potential conflicts, as well as have the applicant identify the method of construction underneath the road. We have not received that underground profile yet. I understand that the applicant is working to map out the existing utilities. There is a paper street which is located in between the 2 parcels. It's known as Canoe Lake Drive. There's no records, I've spoken with the town attorney on this, there's no records to indicate that it is a town-owned road, but I have put the onus on the applicant to identify ownership of this paper street. If it turns out that it is a town-owned road, an easement will be needed under this area also. Before we go forward too much, I believe the applicants have done some work on that title report. I don't know if they'd like to address some of that as we go forward.
Of course, absolutely.
Yeah.
Would you like to address it now?
Yeah.
Sure.
Absolutely. Well, again, thanks very much for having us here. We really appreciate your time. put a lot of work into this project and understand it takes a lot of work to review it, so we appreciate the staff, the town, and Brad. Regarding Canoe Lake Avenue, we started title search internally a few months ago, actually, and we were not able to determine a owner. So we hired Chicago Title Company, and they did an exhaustive title search for almost now, I would say total 4 months. And they determined that the town does not own the road, but they cannot determine a definitive owner. What they've said is that this is actually quite common, and the abutting landowners both have the right to use the property.
So is this road part of an old file map?
It's on your tax map. It is on there.
But I'm just saying, like, when the two parcels on both sides were created, it was probably by a map that was filed in the clerk's office, could have been in the 20s, for all we know. But that's usually how roads are created, on an old file map. So I would want our town attorney's office to look into that and see whether or not an abandonment is necessary or an easement.
What we'll do is we'll share with Bob and the town attorney's office the findings from Chicago. Their work on it has been really exhaustive, and they've said that it's one of the most in-depth type of things that they've ever done on something, you know, that is essentially this narrow of an issue. And it's been really vexing to them because there's just no apparent answer. But I think you're right. It'd be an easement or an abandonment, and I guess they'll determine that best from reviewing all of Chicago's findings. So I'll make sure that it's delivered to them.
Okay.
All right, moving on, in terms of wetlands and New York State Department of Environmental Conservation, the application does not propose any disturbance within any wetland buffer areas, be it DEC or Town Conservation Advisory Council. It's noted that the southern portion of both parcels is located within a DEC Wild Scenic and Recreational Rivers area. It's designated as a recreation area. Coordination and comments will be handled with the DEC through the secret coordination process, so we will ensure that all their comments are received and that the use is compatible with the Wild Scenic and Recreational Rivers area prior to any approvals. Both parcels are also located within the Pine Barrens compatible growth area. It's noted that there is very minimal tree removal associated with this proposed project. There is no tree removal being proposed on the western parcel. And on the eastern parcel, there is very minimal removal of trees. They're not removing any contiguous areas of forested land. The removals consist mainly of ornamental vegetation around the clubhouse and some sporadic trees on the golf course near Edwards Avenue. On page 4 of the staff report, I've kind of just snapshotted some aerials from our town GIS. Page 4, you'll see a couple of sporadic trees throughout the golf course. And there is a swath of trees to the west of the clubhouse. It appears that the underground utility line was shown through this area. I believe the applicant can move that utility line to eliminate.
Absolutely, yeah.
Yes.
It was not our intent to touch or take these trees, so we'll move the line collection and make sure the trees aren't cleared, absolutely.
And we've had a lot of discussion about this in code revision, because, I mean, certainly, I like having solar come, but I don't wanna have to cut down a lot of trees for solar. But your project, I'm pleased that your project has minimal tree clearing.
Absolutely, yeah.
According to Greg and the
When we designed
rest.
this and, spoke
Mhm.
initially, we
Right.
said, we don't wanna clear any trees. It's really limited to the ornamental trees that were brought in with the golf course.
Yes,
No-
and we
no
did,
large swaths.
because I did put the legislation forward that we wouldn't allow for tree clearing of forested areas for solar. And it finally did make it out of code revision and went up for a public hearing, and we did receive a letter from your lawyer addressing the ornamental trees, which I did not have a problem with, the clearing of those ornamental trees. So I think everybody weighed in on that, correct?
Yes.
Yeah.
And I just wanted to add, just so it's very clear too, that the NextEra engineering staff really did a fabulous job, because they actually took extra great pains, and just to be more precise, the only trees that would be removed here, and again, it's very limited, of course, but are ornamental or that were added after the fact for decorative purposes.
Right.
There's no vegetation
No
here.
natural vegetation.
Natural that is being touched at all.
And we applaud you for that. That's,
Yes, I'd
that's
like
what we
to see that
to
on
see.
all projects.
And it is noted on page 2 of my staff report. I've shown, I've highlighted the 2 parcels. There is a large area of contiguous wooded vegetation on the western parcel that they are proposing to keep in its entirety, so. As I said, the western parcel, they're not proposing any clearing, so that is very.
Would you be willing to covenant that? That's the part that's adjoining the recreation trail? Greg? Is that the piece that's
Yes,
adjoining
so.
the recreation trail?
Actually, yes, it does. On page 6 of the staff report.
So maybe just a 15-foot
Is this-
buffer.
Is this in the, this is compatible growth, or both lots are compatible growth area, Pine Barrens?
Both-
Compatible growth.
Both parcels?
I mean, it's like, in terms of the applicant, would you be willing to covenant that area as open space to remain natural?
Yeah, when you say covenant, just that we will not touch it?
Yep,
Yeah,
Yes.
absolutely,
Great.
that's our intent.
thank you.
I think as part of compatible growth, you can only develop, what is it, 50% or so?
Right, yeah, so there's no question, that can all be covenanted, and
Absolutely,
we'll
yeah,
put that in
we don't
writing.
intend to, right now or in the future.
Thank you.
So, as Councilwoman Giglio stated, that western parcel does abut the Epcal Bike Trail, but that wooded area on the western portion of that lot does provide sufficient screening, so, based on the surrounding area, the solar farm should not be visible from anywhere on the bike trail.
And how is the fence over there also? Because when S-Power had come in, they replaced that portion of fence for us because the former perimeter fence for Grumman was dilapidated and falling down into the trail. So S-Power agreed to replace that length of fence that was on their property on the western portion.
Yeah, so you're talking on the west side of the.
Yep, where that buffer is to remain.
Yeah, I guess we'd have to see if it's actually on our parcel, first of all. Yeah, we could check on the status of that.
Yeah, I mean, just for security purposes for yourself
Well,
also,
But-
that
and
people are not gonna be.
And to be clear, our site we'll have our own perimeter fencing around the solar facility.
Right, so that's all I'm saying, is just, they took down the old fence that was there when Grumman was there, and they replaced it with a new fence, and, you know, it was for their own security purposes also, so I think it would benefit you as well.
They will be proposing, just for information, they will be proposing a fence inside of that area, just to contain all of their solar panels. So they will have a fence. I don't know the status of the fence.
On the other side of the tree clearing.
Exactly, on the other side of the
Okay.
tree clearing.
I'd like to know the length of that, is all.
All right,
Thank you.
I can find that out. There is an existing dilapidated residence on the western parcel, located in the southwest corner of the parcel near River Road. I took a picture of that on page 7 of my staff report. Review of town building files did not identify any COs, LPEUs, or any permits for this structure. So it's likely just a pre-existing building, but the windows are boarded up, it seems like it's vacant. Staff would recommend that the applicants remove this house.
And the foundation?
This one your
And
property?
full demolition. I mean, it would likely, in its current status, would likely fall under a blighted property, so just to get ahead of that issue, we'll make that recommendation. And as I understand, the applicant has no objections to removing
Not at
that.
all.
Nope, we'll do that.
In terms of landscaping and screening, the application does propose a black vinyl chain link fence around the entire perimeter of the solar farm per town code. The fence will be installed 6 inches above grade to allow for small animal access. It's noted that there are additional buffers that are required in certain areas on the eastern and western parcels. I don't know if you want to show the landscaping map so the town board can see.
It's two separate ones, so it's this one for the eastern parcel. So you can see the hatched areas where we have the proposed landscaping. There's two different scenarios. One's for along roadways and abutting residential uses or zones consistent with the zoning. So that's the 50-foot wide buffer with shrubs and trees. And then 25-foot wide adjacent to industrial zones, which is just trees.
And what size trees are going in?
We're gonna install 7 to 8 foot height.
Okay.
For trees, and then 2 to 3 foot shrubs.
Okay.
So that's the.
Something the deer like to eat, because they'll turn up in lollipop trees.
It's, right, it's primarily gonna be, the trees will be cedars and spruces.
Okay, good.
Yeah, and then, this is for the western parcel, again, it's mostly forested around it, so primarily just along the roadway and, around this adjoining use.
So now on this parcel, it's noted that they would need to install a vegetative buffer along the northern property boundary.
Right, so we didn't include one here because, it's our understanding that there's another, potential solar application to the north. So we could certainly provide buffering there if requested by the board.
Big trees, lots of shade, probably.
Exactly.
So,
There we
in,
go.
in between the two properties, is this, what is that?
So that's Canoe Lake, which
That's
is
Canoe-
owned by
Canoe
New
Lake.
York State DEC.
Okay,
All of the disturbance is outside of the DEC jurisdictional area.
okay.
Now, they're not proposing any additional buffers on either property bordering Canoe Lake.
So there'd be no buffers in between, no
But
fence?
there would be a
The
fence,
fence
but
would-
there's no proposed vegetation buffers.
Okay.
When I did a site visit, I drove the entirety of both sites. The screening that's there, I mean, being that the parcel is never gonna be developed, it's owned by the DEC, I don't think it was necessarily appropriate to require additional vegetative screening because there are some significant buffers there with existing vegetation.
Okay,
So, like I said, on this parcel, on the northern piece, and there's a little portion on the southwest which they can increase the buffer on. And for this parcel, which is the Long Island Sports Park parcel, again, just a buffer would be required along the northern property boundary.
Yeah, and again, so this use right here is agricultural. There's a actively farmed field here, so we didn't propose any landscaping here, because if we put trees, again, shading, this being south, the shadow's gonna cast to the north, so
Exactly.
we'd be shading. So we're happy to provide plantings there, but it could impact, ag operations, so just wanted to bring that to your
is,
attention.
how big is that parcel to the north there?
I don't have that information available, I can find out.
Just
You
because
can
of it,
probably see about half of it. I mean, the field extends probably not that much further north.
What I know in the report, I believe it says if it's ever developed, that's.
Then you'll put the-
That's the
But we
concern,
could
yeah.
absolutely leave it as is now, and then in the future, make it, if it is developed, we'll go in there and put screening,
Right,
however.
Okay.
we'll agree to that, it was just a thought to not impact any agricultural operations that owner may have, but certainly we'll agree.
Well,
If
the
it
next
changes
owner
over.
may want to put
Absolutely.
screening, whatever they put, they want to put screening against you, so.
Yeah,
okay, very good.
Alright, moving on, glare analysis. The applicant did provide a glare analysis, which was prepared by a glare analysis company. They found that there is no impacts or conflicts for potential glare with the EPCAL runways. It's noted that the project location is outside of the FAA jurisdictional areas for airports, but the site would comply with the glare analysis nonetheless. I did note one thing, that the report did not analyze glare at the air traffic control tower at EPCAL, being that it's an unregulated or an uncontrolled airport. I would recommend that the glare analysis should be updated to take that tower into account in the event in the future that it ever does become a controlled airport.
And we have that underway. I've started
Right.
that. Our capital airspace is, it's an unmanned tower, but we can actually run it and see if there will be anything in the future.
but that would be great if you could update the report. And I don't believe that there will be, because we've seen this in the past where, around East Hampton Airport, as an example.
The project does comply with lot coverage setback requirements to the commercial industrial property. I did speak with the applicant. There's one section in the eastern portion of the Long Island Sports Park parcel, which it appeared as though one bank of solar panels was within the required setback to a residential parcel. It was literally one bank of solar panels. I don't think it would be a significant undertaking for them to just relocate that further into the site, if it turns out that the scaling was accurate.
Yeah, no, we did not intend that when the CAD drawings came out, they put it out
Put
there.
it over.
It was never our intent to be inside the septic. We'll absolutely move that out.
Yeah, it's kinda just the way the parcels are configured. There's one
There's a-
corner of the
yeah,
lot where
It
it's
depends
only
where
about
you're tying
85.
in from,
I know
so.
exactly where you're at.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's right, so it's.
So it's your intention to move it and
So just
maintain the
get
buffer that's
residential.
Yeah,
required?
in fact, we
Okay.
already had that as an
Residential
item that we
traffic.
discussed previously with Greg today.
And then in terms of the duration of the special permit, the applicant, the town code allows for a 20-year special permit by granting of the town board, and allows for the possibility of 5-year extensions by request of the town board. Now, the applicant, at the beginning of this process, they are initially asking for the initial 20-year permit, and they're asking for 2 5-year extensions. As I understand, that coincides with the LIPA RFP that was put out.
Right.
So, that's something, just the loss of land for the 30 years must be analyzed under a secret review.
So you have a PPA for 30 years or 25?
We were awarded the contract for 30 years.
30.
Okay.
So it's just so that it conforms.
Yep. And then, is there a decommissioning,
Plan.
Yeah, decommissioning plan, yes.
so you've given that to our planning staff?
Yes, they did submit it. I've referred it out to our town engineer, as well as our consulting engineer. I have not gotten comments back on that from the consulting engineer, but they did provide it, and it will be analyzed, and the decommissioning plan will need to be approved before any approvals are, granted.
Thank
I just
you.
have a question about the decommissioning plan, the way it's written, because if solar's on here for 20 or 30 years, and this is originally ag land here, to turn it back to ag land, when everything is pulled up, does the soil get is it,
Better.
is
Yeah,
it?
so
Doesn't the
we don't
pulling
install
up
foundations
turn
for
it?
the racking systems, the posts will just be driven into the ground. So
Okay.
it's just a matter of pulling the posts out. So it's very limited disturbance to just the post. So, you could remove the post and it could be reused for agriculture purposes.
So does anything need to be done to the land when everything's pulled up, to return it to ag land?
It would
Is
be-
there,
It'd be mostly the access roads, so, we're gonna have gravel access roads, but they'll have, a sub base, just so it's supported. So those areas in particular, you have to remove that sub base and probably put topsoil back
that's what
down.
I'm saying, but is that generally part of our decommissioning, to put topsoil on top of it?
It's to basically restore the lands to their existing state.
Okay, so is that tested before, what kind of soil it is?
Well, so this is interesting because in previous reviews of solar farms, there's been comments that have come from New York State Ag and Markets which state that at the end of 20 years, the farmland and the potential to farm that land is essentially lost. I think that needs more research and more
Really?
identification because,
I thought
you know,
just
it
the
just,
opposite.
yeah.
Yeah, I
mean,
would think it's
to me, it seems like
counterintuitive to me, yeah.
you're maintaining the soils on the property, whereas if this property were to be developed with an industrial use, to dig out foundations and require drainage, you'd be losing a lot of that soils and it would be removed from the property, whereas, as they've stated, here, they're essentially sticking piles in the ground. Yeah, they would build some roads, they would need to remove some for the installation of the trenching of the underground utility, but for the most part, the soils and the underlying soils are left undisturbed. So
I-
that's something that'll be handled through the secret process, because it will be referred to Ag and Markets, and they will be able to provide comments on that. And I would probably just advise the applicant to start doing the research on that end, just to, analyze the potential loss of farming soils or.
Yeah, I'm surprised, because I really thought the opposite was true, that as it's laid dormant for 20 or 30 years, that soil would rejuvenate itself
Right.
automatically.
Well, I think the difference is when it was first analyzed, when they did the solar, I think they were putting the cement footings in.
Right.
To put the solar in, and you're not doing
We're
that
not
with
doing
this.
that.
Right, so you're not doing that with this project, so I think when you took everything out and turned it over is when you lost some of the land, or, when you were clearing up, the soil went with it, but I would like just to see what kind of soil it is and to make sure that it goes back, to what it was when
The
it's
existing state.
decommissioned.
I have to wonder if,
won't be here.
it doesn't get the nutrients it needs, from other plants being in there, maybe, I don't know.
It's my understanding, it's this, when it's ripped up, if all the cement, as I said, the cement pilings were in there, that was what was going on. I don't know that that's the case anymore, but that's what
They
you guys
used
We
to
can-
say that when you pulled things up, that actually helped turn over the soil.
Right, and, it'll be, it's gonna be a grass seed mixture that's gonna be below the panels, so,
So it will have,
right. Yeah, you'll mow that and.
We can
Okay.
take that back in our response document to the planning
Yeah.
staff comments, put, our excerpt or attach a report.
So we're taking lead agency on this?
Well, that's what we're planning, that's what the.
Yeah, that would be the recommendation. The next step, I would draft up a resolution for the town board to circulate a request. That would be sent out to other involved agencies. They would have a 30-day period to respond to those comments. Any other agency that would wish to exert lead agency status, that would have to be, if there's ever a conflict between two agencies, that's determined by the DEC. We'd basically send them a letter and say, we've got two agencies that would like lead agency, and DEC handles that.
So, I just have a couple questions. So, where are these connecting? How are you tying these lines in?
Right here, I'll show you. On the northern west parcel, there's a collection line right here that connects the two.
And
that'll
what
be a-
property is that going?
That is a private landowner.
Okay,
Yeah, that parcel is what's considered the back nine of the Calverton Links.
Okay.
They would require an easement through that area, so we would need a legal description of that area. That area would be encumbered by an easement, and it would obviously need an owner's endorsement from the owner of that parcel.
and then where does it tie in?
Under
So
Edwards,
we
right?
have, the collection is coming through here. our collection substation is on our property on the east, and it ties into the Edwards Avenue substation right here, so we'll get the road crossing agreement, we're glad to get that. And then we'll have an
Yes.
easement with LIPA
Check
right
with
here
that.
to connect.
Will the substation have to be expanded or increased to
We,
accommodate?
we are currently in an interconnection process with the NISO and LIPA that is studying the facility.
And are there any health impacts associated with the expansion of the substation, as far as the electricity that it's generating coming out of there?
Not that I'm aware of, but I would have to defer to LIPA, but not that I'm aware of at all.
So around substations with the heavy power lines, there's no health impacts?
No, I mean, it's an existing substation.
No, I know.
And it's just going to be a tie-in to what's there.
I know, but you're expanding it, right? So it's gonna
That's to be
produce
determined whether
more
it
energy.
really need to be
It's
expanded.
under, so right now, the NISO and LIPA are studying, there's a very rigorous connection process that goes through feasibility, system impact, and facilities, and they, throughout that whole process, they determine if you can connect, what it needs to happen to the substation, sometimes you can just tie right in, and that's in the process right now.
Because I know S-Power did expand the substation, and I think that's a question that I asked of them, did they ever,
Well,
I know
so-
that you said that they had it in their report, we read it in the report, that there were no health impacts, but as we get bigger, you know, I just am
I don't
curious
think there's
about.
any
No, I
residences
don't-
around that area, right?
I just, don't want to answer for LIPA, but no, I don't
There's no
believe so.
residences around it.
Well, so that is a question that has come up because, as I understand, S-Power, S-Power would not upgrade the LIPA substation. S-Power did create a step-up facility on their parcel on the east side of Edwards Avenue, which transforms the voltage up to transmission voltage. In terms of whether LIPA needs any sort of permits or anything to expand, that has been a question that has been raised. When we look at this thing in its totality, there is no question that substation is sort of the magnet which is attracting, these solar farms to that area. It gives them a connection point to bring in, but in terms of whether they need to coordinate with the town, that's yet to be determined. I'm not an attorney, so I can't really comment on
Again,
whether they need to
Greg
coordinate.
is right, that is a legal, opinion. East Hampton did try to render a request or require a building permit for an expansion of a substation in East Hampton. PSEG sued, they won. Is that correct, Bob? East Hampton, they tried to require building permits for the expansion of a substation, and there was a lawsuit, and the town lost.
The case was decided against them by Wayland at the first level. They did appeal, but in the interim, the work had proceeded ahead. The report at the appellate division chose not to address the merits because of the fact that it had been built out while before the appeal was decided.
I'd like to see why East Hampton, filed the lawsuit to begin with, and what their concerns were.
They didn't file the lawsuit, PSEG did. East Hampton wanted
Wanted
to
a building
require a
permit.
building permit, and PSEG.
Right.
And PSEG sued them, saying you don't have the authority to require a building permit.
The money grab.
Because they're a public authority.
Greg,
Right.
I agree with you somewhat that this substation may be a magnet, but I think I think it's more than that. I think the area itself being industrial, one, and the fact that it's really not visible from any means of public transportation anyway. It's just a perfect area, I think, for this type of use, so.
I agree.
I know there was a lot of opposition from Owen Construction that was right across the street there, and then the Farm Bureau had some comments, and some of the residences that lived right along Edwards Avenue at the time that the substation was being built, or built out. So, just a question, that's all.
I don't know about that. I haven't heard any of it.
Anything?
I've pretty much wrapped up all the major points that I can touch on, unless there's some additional questions that the town board has. Like I said, the next step would be for me, I'll just draft up that resolution for lead agency coordination, we can start the process on that.
Would it be worthwhile, Greg, I think maybe one of the only outstanding issues, although a very minor one, was the question of a building permit for to replace panels?
Yeah, okay, so there was a question, one of the use regulations in section 308-282 of the town code. Let's just find it. It says, "A building permit may be required for replacing solar panels and accessory equipment as determined by the chief building inspector." Now, just looking at the scope of the project, it's theoretical that in the future, as technologies expand, right now it's a 22.9 megawatt facility. As technology gets better, there is a possibility that they could potentially increase the megawatt production without changing the footprint necessarily. panels get more efficient. So there was a question of whether or not a building permit would be required to replace solar panels.
And I did
Well,
speak
it would
with,
be,
I
'cause
did
it would-
speak with Brad Hammond about that before he left, back when we drafted that code. And if it's a couple of panels that need to be replaced or repaired, he would not be required.
Well,
Okay.
let me
Yes.
just address that. Between a replace and repair is different because the solar is also under a pilot program. So the pilot program, we do base on the megawatts. So to replace panels and increase your megawatt would open that back up again.
Right.
So
The one
that
thing-
would be,
right.
you know, there would be some mechanism.
And that was the follow-up to what Brad was saying, if it was a wholesale replacement of all the panels, that would. require building permit.
But even intermittent replacement of the panels, that would put them above the 22.9 would be.
Well, that would be above and beyond the repair of the couple of panels in place.
Well, not necessarily as
Well,
technology
I think I could,
changes,
I
yeah.
think I could address that. I think perhaps the best way to look at this would be, again, your decision to control, but if there are panels that, let's say, have to be replaced because of hail damage, or, you know, the occasional intermittent or isolated panel that gets damaged due to weather, I think it would be unduly burdensome and probably not necessary to then require a building permit
I agree.
process just to do that. With respect.
If you replace it with the same specs.
Correct, and the one thing is that we, and I think this is where the confusion comes in, we can't change panels to a technology that would increase the megawatt outage, because then that would violate the LIPA contract. And it would also violate the agreement that we have with the ISO. Now, Michael's going to explain that, but just for practical purposes, I think it's good to understand that couldn't happen, because we're bound to only provide what we're contractually bound to provide.
I think that what we would need to do, I hear your request, I think we need to have an internal discussion before we would address the
Yeah,
issue.
and can I
Because-
just add one
But I
thing to
think
what
it's
Steve
Michael,
said?
he'll explain it a little
Yes,
in more detail.
Ongoing O&M with solar projects, sometimes they do require some solar panels to be replaced, but we are limited at 22.9 megawatts from our interconnection agreement with LIPA. and
Past the 20 years?
Correct. The only way we can ever inject more than 22.9 megawatts, we would have to go back and get an entire restudy from LIPA and New York Independent System Operator. We're also limited by our inverters and general step-up, so we would actually have to go in there and replace inverters and a GSU, which would violate our permit that we have now. So at no point in time through our life of the project will we inject more than 22.9 megawatts.
Right.
There may be a scenario where a panel technology gets better, and let's say a panel now, the panel in 10 years is half the size. So if we replace that panel, we can put a panel that has a different spec, but it's just smaller because of panel efficiencies, and we replace it.
But we can't increase the outage.
So you're saying that over the next 30 years, LIPA can't go back and say, we're still having blackouts on the east end, and we need more, megawatts going into the system, that they
Well,
can't renegotiate that?
That would be a whole, we would have, if they wanted that to happen.
It could happen.
Maybe it would be an RFP, and then we would also have to come back because.
We'd have to come back
We
to you.
don't,
So-
we currently, this project cannot produce more than 22.
So my concern is, LIPA, there's obviously value in having an existing solar field, number one. Number two, if they needed more megawatts, you're already connected. If there was a alternative panel that you could put up that would produce more ampage, and LIPA said, let's do this quick, and you do your restudy and you get more ampage, that increases the value of the property, not only to LIPA, but to you, because you're getting paid for the ampage that you're producing. So that also increases your assessment value. So when our assessors look at it and they look at what a 22.9 megawatt facility is producing, and now you jump it up to a 30 or a 35 megawatt, and we don't know where the state is going as far as how many megawatts you need, where, the towns are really taken out of it. I mean, you're 22.9, so I know.
But I
it's-
guess what I'm saying is, I hear exactly what that scenario could be, but in essence, it couldn't happen because, first of all, we'd have to come back to you. And second of all, LIPA would then have to issue an entirely new RFP.
Go beyond the
And there would
22.
have to be all of the processes that come with all of those things happening.
I was gonna say, this is something that couldn't be done
So then covenant
in the
it,
dark of
that
the
it
night.
only
This
takes
is something that would have to be
22.9.
really researched.
I'm not saying that it may not be possible, but I think we need to do a little bit more
Right.
internal investigation as to why that was put in there
Sure.
and
But
to
if
give you
you're-
an
right.
answer.
The way I see it, I mean, if your light bulb burns out, you're gonna replace the light, you replace the light. It's-
Right.
It's not a big deal to me, but if you're gonna replace the lamp, then we gotta talk.
That's the great analogy, and
So
it was just a flag that we wouldn't be tied up when you have those situations that, look, there's some hail, 3 panels are damaged, we just need to switch out the 3. It's just to account for those sorts of scenarios.
So then you'll have no
Basic
problem with
maintenance.
putting the covenant in that says that it will not exceed 22.9 megawatts unless you come back to the town and
Absolutely.
ask for
Absolutely
permission.
not.
Okay, good.
Absolutely.
Yep.
How close are you to Epcot? Can we get some, to see for lights over there?
All right,
Community
so-
benefit, James.
All right, so, very good. I think, does
Solar
anybody
lights
else have
along
any
the
other
trail.
questions?
One more question. Who owns the property right now where the Lynx at Calverton Links was?
There's two, so the eastern property is a private landowner and the western property is also a private landowner.
And
Both
when do you
one
plan
owner.
on starting
Separate
construction?
owners.
Yes,
Well,
sir.
this is that's something that wasn't mentioned, it is a 2020 COD. To hit that target, we would usually want to start construction in March of the same year.
So March of 2020, because we are getting a lot of Chapter 255 applications for use for the property, so it's good for us to know when you're actually going to be.
That's when we would, like, if it can be earlier, we'd obviously like that, more a bigger construction timeline is always easier, but I think March.
So if you have an agreement with the owner that you take title of the property effective that date, it would be helpful for us to have a copy of that.
Absolutely.
Sure.
Thank you.
We
Yeah.
can get that.
We'd like to move of course, as quickly as you'll permit us to.
Yep.
But I think that might, as you said, with respect to the things that are going on in the
That are
property,
planned there,
it might
yeah.
solve multiple
Yes.
objectives.
One item of apologies that wasn't addressed was the applicant LI Solar Generation. It's actually a joint venture company between National Grid and NextEra Energy, not just NextEra Energy. So
Okay.
we're partners, National Grid and NextEra.
Okay. Very good.
Thank you for the time.
Thank you.
All right, thank you very much.
Thank you very much. We
Well, let's
appreciate your
see
time.
Thank you.
Thanks, appreciate it.
See if our electric rates go down.
Councilman?
Nice to see you.
Thank you.
Take care, all right, thank you very much.
Life is
Bye-bye.
enormous
Thanks.
energy,
Nice to meet
that's
you.
not gonna reduce our rates.
care.
Take care, thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for your time. Jim, thank you.
Steve, you're welcome, thank you, sir.
All right, next we will move on to code revision, car dealership, parking code change. We have Bob and Jeff Murphy.
Ooh, excuse me.
Parking code change. Good morning, everybody.
Good morning.
Morning.
This has to do with car dealerships needing more space to store cars in their inventory.
Yes.
They have told us that the auto manufacturers are requiring that they take a larger minimum order for cars for delivery. And as you've seen, car dealers have been very creative in trying to locate them wherever they can, and they have been subject to the issuance of numerous violations. They need a place to put the cars. So, code committee drafted a code for you, and I've got copies for you here. You can take one down, pass it down.
Here are copies for.
Bob, do you have your copy?
Yeah, I put some here, I didn't mark draft on mine. And
Oh,
hopefully,
yeah, yeah,
hopefully
yeah,
they're
yeah.
consistent with your copies.
Industrial zoning.
So the code that you see before you would be located in the industrial A, so I came up with a really high-tech colored zoning map for you. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, to show you the different zoning districts in the industrial zone. Jim, if you take one, pass it down. Here's one for us. Anybody-
Thank you.
Look, I'm sitting in the front of the class here. Take one, pass it down.
Absolutely. You're in the front of the class, Jim. So,
Are you passing it down?
No, the teacher failed to do it.
I'm used to having a student do it.
the code committee is recommending that the cars would be for car storage only in the industrial A zoning district. I shouldn't say only industrial A because it's quite an expansive area. It goes from Edwards Avenue all the way over to the eastern property line of Splish Splash. Includes all the area around Manor Road, all the way to Lee Browning's Hotel on Route 58. So it is a very large area. I apologize, I don't have the exact acreage. I've left that in my other file. Some of the other car dealerships wanted in industrial A, B, and C. The only industrial C zone that's in the town, most of it is owned by the town, it's the landfill over on Youngs Avenue. There's a small parcel to the north that's also industrial C, but it's surrounded by residential and agricultural zoning, so we do not feel it's appropriate there. The industrial B, that is way larger than industrial A, and we feel that's overkill in terms of the demand for the type of the need for that use. If the industrial ever came to fruition that the car parking exceeded the industrial A, we'd have to come back and revisit it, but for right now, we think that the industrial A is large enough to accommodate the proposed demand at this time. Just to give you some particulars on the code itself, we've heard concerns about the proposed setbacks. The code setbacks that you have before you, which is on page 2, are consistent with the solar farms. If you know that, remember, we had issues originally with solar panels being much closer to the road, and the solar industry wanting closer so that they can get more panels in. But visibility is, even with the panels as low as they are, you're still gonna see them, and so we're mirroring what we did with the solar panels. The setbacks would be 50 feet from the front, side, and rear lot lines. We feel that that's adequate with provided that you give adequate evergreen landscaping to try to screen them. Some people like to see hundreds of new cars. A lot of people don't like to see 100 new cars parked in a parking field. It's gonna be looking like a shopping center at Christmas time with the whole parking lot filled up. It's gonna be visible. So we'd like to have some mitigation to that and try to soften it to some degree.
Just in the solar code, does it allows some flexibility with where the setbacks are, right? For visual screening, you can move some of the setbacks around, I thought?
Don't believe it does, I think it's 50 feet.
I thought it was, okay.
Yep. And it's 50-foot front, side, and rear setbacks from the rear, front, and side yards. The storage area shall be physically defined and maintained with adequate fencing, so that people aren't parking outside of the defined area and landscaped areas. Fueling, washing, servicing, or sales are strictly prohibited.
I would eliminate washing. I would think that they should be able to wash the cars there and put a structure there for washing the cars if they chose to.
We felt that that was done already on the car dealership when they, at the point of sales, rather than having hundreds of cars that are being washed on the site. That could lead to a lot of soaps
Drainage.
and drainage issues.
Yeah, but it's industrial A.
So,
I don't know, a lot of the soaps are in the, are harmful.
Well, not nowadays, and new car washes that are being approved are
But the dirty
actually.
dozen.
Okay, so
list.
new car washes that are being approved through Article 6 of the Suffolk County Department of Health Services and types of services like this, it's, same thing with swimming pools. It's regulated as to what they can use and put into the ground, so, and a lot of them are going into containers and then just being reused, so I would say that I would wanna talk to the dealerships to see if there was a desire, now or at any time, to provide, a car wash on the industrial A property, because, and not only that, but for, tax purposes also, if it's a vacant lot with storing cars, there's no real change in the assessed value, but if you start putting structures on it, then there is.
we'll look into it.
Thank you.
What they need is a parking lot, they don't need anything else more than that, I don't think.
They're probably gonna want a booth to be able to see the cars that are leaving, and somebody will probably be there to,
We're not allowing trees to be cleared for the creation of the storage area. No storage of used or junk vehicles will be allowed. The use has to be associated with a car dealership that's physically located in the town. You can't have a Brooklyn dealer storing cars here. It has to be a dealership within the town. If that dealership, for some reason, ceases operation in Riverhead, that off-site parking also has to cease as well.
so, if they did wanna put a structure on the property, for example, it would just be under the industrial A dimensional setbacks?
Well, then they would have, I think
Depends on
Because
what
I
they-
don't wanna, I want
You don't
all
wanna
the permitted uses
prevent them
within
from doing
industrial
that.
A and not prevent them from building a structure on there if they chose to do so.
Again, we'd have to go back and revisit it, because we have talked about, for example, allowing cars to be stored at Splish Splash during their off-season. But to have, it depends on what the use of the building would be for. If it's an interior building, do you want car sales at the
Yeah,
site?
can somebody come there to look at a car, because
Well, it
it's
says
a
no
showroom.
sales shall take
Right.
place, so leave
Right.
that in.
So what would the purpose of the building would be?
Well, the purpose of the building could be that they wanna upgrade their stereo, or they want to, change out the tires, or change out the wheels, or,
That goes beyond what we were charged with doing this. We were just trying to find a place to store the cars.
Storage only.
Yeah.
That was
And
it.
by the way, I would
overflow.
not wanna make either of those
But,
changes.
okay.
I would not be in
well,
favor
that's
of
your
that.
opinion,
Okay.
but I would like to know what the
Well,
dealerships
then-
want.
I'm allowed to give my opinion.
Then I think they would be coming in for a permitted use of an auto body and fender repair shop, which would be something very different from what, just a car storage facility.
I don't know that it would be an auto body and a repair shop, because we're not talking about wrecked vehicles, we're talking about upgrading vehicles. New
Right.
vehicles.
I thought the discussion was to find a place for these dealerships to be able to handle their
Inventory.
inventory.
Yeah, I think this is getting
That
more
was
Not
the
complicated.
concern.
creating a separate
Right.
work area. I don't know,
They may
maybe,
have
I
other
think we're,
needs. That's
maybe we're
all.
looking at trying to create
Well,
a
this would
society
have-
that's not there.
We'd have to go
This
back
would have to go
to-
through public hearing anyhow, so we can address it,
Yeah, and,
at that point.
and we'd have to go back to code committee to look at, come
Yeah.
up with the other things.
I mean, certainly, I
We
don't
can look
think you're
at
gonna
that.
have 5 different dealerships all buying, hopefully they would work together to buy one area to do it, I would think.
Yeah, instead of one dealership taking.
Yeah,
it over.
right.
Yeah, I thought there was a subdivision proposed actually for,
No, you can't limit, one person from buying it, or it's,
I thought Israel
So-
was
There is a
proposing a four.
location,
I
yeah.
thought that there was a location where they were looking at a 4-lot subdivision and they were gonna
It is.
sell off the individual lots to the dealers.
where you
On
see
Manor.
the A on the zoning map, Jody, that is the Manor
On
Road
Manor,
subdivision, they're
yeah.
looking at 4-lot subdivision there.
That's what I thought, thank you.
Wolf Manor?
Yeah, on Manor.
Yeah, if you
On-
take a look at
on
where the A is on
East side of Manor. Good, good area.
Much
as-
needed.
As it comes off of, 20 Middle Country Road.
I think it's great.
So
It's gonna
it's-
also
it is.
eliminate a lot of problems as far as unloading new cars and things of that nature, that
So-
it's,
I'm just curious with the setbacks, right? So the setbacks is a 50-yard, 50-foot
50
from front, side and
side and rear.
and
Yep.
rear lots. And then the the vegetated perimeter is 50 foot from the along the main roads?
It's 50-foot setback, and then there'd be a 25-foot vegetative buffer, so you'd have to have 25 feet of vegetative screening.
And then and on the sides, what do you have to have?
25 feet.
And 50 from the main roads?
I'm sorry, it's 50 feet along the road and 25 feet on the side and rear.
Okay, I'm just curious, because it is industrial A, so we don't have residential. So if it's not abutting a residential on the sides, and we're gonna ask for 25-foot
Mhm.
vegetative on the side,
Mhm.
especially if you're going in between, if there's gonna be 4 subdivision lots here, do
Right.
you need
They
50
can
feet?
They can merge the lots, in which case you wouldn't have that that side yard requirement.
Okay.
You want redoing
That
the
would be an
buffering for
alternative,
visual
but then
purposes
they-
too, not just,
That's all it is.
I would think-
Subdivision
not just for
conversion.
residential, we were
No, it's
doing.
just-
Yeah, so it's regardless.
But I would think if it's, because what's this here? This is,
That's agriculture, APZ.
because I could see 25 unless you're abutting a different zone
yeah,
on
but,
on the sides.
yeah, but just as we spoke
Everything that you see
about,
along this would be 50.
Right, everything that you see along here would be 50, right?
Right, yep.
But if you have here, 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 and they're abutting, their rear yards are next to each other, can they just do 25 feet and the 25 feet of vegetation on the sides unless they abut a different zone?
Well, again, if you're speaking to those 4 lots, they would be side yards.
Right.
Right, the side yards,
Side
that's-
yards would be abutting one another, not the rear yards.
Right,
That's what our
so that's
code
what,
says.
but that's what I'm saying,
Right.
but we're saying they have to have a 50
feet.
foot setback on the sides and 25-foot vegetation.
50 all the way around for setbacks and 25-foot vegetated buffer. And
On the
50
sides.
Sides.
Right.
Right, so what I'm saying is on the sides, do they need a 50-foot buffer, or can it be 25 if they're, for the rear yards, if they're not abutting a different zone?
our code says 25, doesn't it?
No.
For industrial properties that are abutting,
Is it abutting another zone or abutting another use?
Another
Because the
use.
use is going to be industrial. The zoning is industrial.
right, but that could change at any
But the
time.
use may be different.
And
Or
that could change at any time, especially if it's vacant land with just cars. Somebody
Correct.
decides to sell it off, and they don't wanna store cars there anymore, and somebody decides to build an industrial building there, then
We
the
lose it.
25-foot buffer on the
What-
side
what-
yard
what-
should remain.
What bothers you with
That-
that,
that-
Laura?
I'm saying the side yards, I don't think they need to be 50-foot buffer.
Oh, I agree with you.
I don't think, a setback, I'm sorry, a 50-foot setback on the side yards if 2 industrial are
I agree.
against each other, but if the side yard is abutting a different zone, such as
So you're looking at
agricultural,
you want a 25-foot side yard on the side yard?
They merge the four
that's what I'm
lots,
saying,
then we have to
unless
do
it
the
abuts a
perimeter.
different zone.
Yeah, that's
So
what the
only
outside
25 to industrial. It has to be industrial A, in other words.
Right, correct,
So an industrial A abutting industrial A is 25 feet.
yeah.
So on the side yard.
No, this
you're-
is calling
I
for
mean,
50.
visually on the side yard,
This
you're
is
not
calling for
gonna.
50.
I don't know, I have to look
If
at
you
it.
look at,
They're
if you look
abutting,
at
so you're not
setback
gonna
A,
be
Well,
right
then
by
there's
them,
gonna
right?
be inconsistencies in the code, because I believe that when we adopted the buffers for industrial sites, it was 25 foot on side yards. So we should be consistent with what the code asks for under the industrial A. That's all. And I think that solves your
Well,
problem.
I think the concept was that we were not gonna have a lot of vegetation and a lot of landscaping in the interior because you're gonna have car lots.
Right.
And therefore, the idea was to have vegetation
25
on the
feet.
sides, or
Right.
on the perimeter of the
That's
project.
exactly
totally,
And
So
totally.
that was the
to-
thinking of the code.
Totally agree,
Okay.
but I think if you have 25 feet of
Interior.
interior vegetation, I don't think you need to have
Two
the
lots.
additional 25 foot of
Okay.
SEPA. That's
Okay.
just my.
Okay, understood.
So I
And
can
then-
make that
and
one
then-
change.
I think that's okay.
And then one of the other things,
25 foot from side
that I know
yards.
people that are here from some of the car dealerships, one of the other things just to bring, you know, if they were to, because, Splish Splash, I don't know that it would ever come to fruition, but Splish Splash is in Industrial A. Would we allow car storage on an existing, parcel?
I don't have a problem with it.
I
It's
think
in the
that would be-
off-season.
During the off-season?
Whenever they, you know, whatever kind of agreement that would be, if they were able to do
Private
that,
owner, he can do what he wants.
I think that would be,
Don't do with me.
Yeah, I mean, he's parked cars there all year
Yeah.
long. I don't think
Parked
that.
in
That's
striped,
between-
there's a
between the
parking
owner of
lot,
Splish
so it's
Splash
really-
and the
it should
owners
be
of
able to be
I can
used.
add that as a sentence in here.
Yeah.
I mean, if everybody agrees, like, that's a simple addition to this.
So are you talking about something other than a special permit use?
So we're
That this
permitted
would be
in
something that would be
industrial
a
A if there's
temporary,
codes involved.
type of application, or, I mean, what are we talking about?
I don't know, that's what I'm asking.
It would have to be probably a special permit,
We presently require a special permit, it's on
Yeah,
a special permit
it'd be a special
uses.
permit.
All right, okay.
and it'd be site plan, just so we know exactly where they're parking it.
Okay.
And
And
then it's
then,
up to the car dealership and the other business owner to arrange the timing of when they're there.
and then my other question, with this code, then what becomes, what kind of surface they can be on, drainage, what are the compliance issues that need to come along with this? Do they have to put a paved parking lot down? Do they have to?
No, we were looking at gravel for the storage, and then there would have to be asphalt for like entrances and things of that nature.
For aprons.
Yeah.
Right, it's
Well,
gotta-
I'm
it's gotta be
pleased to
pervious,
see,
right?
I'm pleased to have in here that we're not gonna clear trees, since that's been an
So do
issue.
that.
But we do have some tree clearing coming up in the near future, correct?
Yes.
But that's already something that's
It's
pre-approved.
already approved, yep.
No tree shall be cleared for
Because
creation of
actually, a
storage
lot
area.
of trees are gonna get cleared behind Ford to the south, correct?
Um,
And that's for
Down-
car storage?
Yeah, down to Pulaski Street.
And the only other thing, because I guess there would be the large tractor trailers coming in to drop
Yeah.
the cars off, just something to address the apron
Yeah.
of them coming in and out, so that it would be larger and there would be easy in and easy out, so that there's the turn, you know, not so that we're creating a turn on this on a smaller road where the trucks are coming out into oncoming
This
traffic.
would require site plan review
Okay.
And it's DOT.
On Middle Country.
Yep.
Yeah.
But, actually, we're actually looking at
think Manor's
prohibiting
ours.
the exit or entrances on that, it would have to be off of Manor.
Yeah.
What is this here? Is this the power lines coming
They're
down?
gonna want a
here? Is that what
commercial
this
apron
is?
anyway. They're not
Yes.
gonna wanna replace it every year.
Right. So I can, what I'll do is I'll go ahead and make the changes about the side yard and for listing, allowing the car storage in existing, development.
that's a
I'll
great area.
recirculate that
So
to you,
close to
if you're in
the-
agreement, we'll circulate it for you.
Great.
The next step is, it's a type one action because it's more than 25 acres. So we've got to do agency coordination first,
Okay. And
before the
so-
public hearing.
Did you wanna say something else?
No, I was just, the public gets upset when we clear trees and.
We're not doing that.
We have something coming up, but that's approved how long ago?
I'm
Yeah,
glad
well,
we can
that's-
help
They
the
just
car
got the slip like,
dealerships.
a
And
month or two ago.
In reference to that one, Catherine, the good side of that is that they won't be unloading cars in the middle of Route 58 anymore.
Right.
Yep.
There is nothing more dangerous up on Route 58 than when they're unloading the cars off to the car carriers in the middle of the highway.
No,
So
I-
The purpose of them,
I'm just saying, you know,
Developing that
after we
back
had that
property.
clearing on Route 58 a
Just so
couple
you give
weeks
the public a
ago,
heads
people
up.
were upset. I'm just giving the public a heads up,
That there's gonna be some more clearing.
that there's gonna be a lot more clearing. I think they need to know, because it's,
property owner's right.
but it's I understand that.
Yep. Thank you.
Anything else?
Thank you for
Thank
getting
you.
this done. I know it's been a problem for the dealerships for a long time in trying to find place for storage of the cars, so it's a good thing.
I'm glad we were able to get this
So
done.
we don't take public comment at this portion, but if you wanna ask a question, go ahead.
Who's this?
Okay,
Do you wanna come?
yeah, you just need to come up.
You should come up so they can hear you on the mic.
I had two thoughts based off your discussion.
Mhm.
One, if you allow the temporary parking at Splish Splash, would the requirements for fencing and trees and shrubbery go into effect in that?
Jeff, I'll have you come up here for this, because I think that is part of the.
Sorry, Tony, can you just, but that's then.
So the question is for the Splish Splash over there, where we have the requirements for the fencing and the setback. I think Splish Splash already meets the setback.
If the way I envisioned it is if it's already paved and parked, we wouldn't require that. If now through site plan review, the planning board may say, you know, this is a highly visible location, throw up a fence and some screening, they could. But that's not envisioned as part of the special permit, so.
And the
And that,
second thing
that's
was,
not usually for a long period of time, right? At Splish Splash, how long will cars?
Again,
park?
that would be, if Tony were to reach some sort of agreement with Splish Splash to store his cars there on an some annual basis, that would be
well,
between.
it's usually annual because they'd be busy at their seasons.
I'm saying,
I'm not sure that's a workable solution because we'd be moving our inventory around their
Just
schedule.
need to talk a little louder, sorry.
Okay, we'd be moving our inventory around their schedule. But it's still good to have an option.
Right, and I think this is, what we're doing is just throwing another option out there, and it's already paved over, and it's
Right.
determined to be used for parking, so
Right.
why not utilize it during, when it's,
To the benefit of all.
Yeah.
Wouldn't the same thing apply some of the open retail spaces on Route 58?
Well, I think the issue with that is that that's not necessarily what we wanna see on Route 58. And there's stores there, and you'd be parking unregistered cars with registered cars, whereas Splish Splash is closed during that period, and there's not the in and out traffic at the same time.
Just a suggestion.
Yeah, and they're not located in Industrial A.
and we're
So-
trying to go for the low-lying fruit first, low-lying fruit, is that what the expression is, first?
The easy
Low
one.
hanging.
Easy one, right, low-hanging fruit, yes, thank you.
And just one, a discussion that you
I
had
butchered that.
concerning a building on these storage lots. I don't anticipate operating there any other thing other than storage. But storage requires some things, sometimes these new cars go dead if they don't get sold soon enough. And maybe an accessory building where we could store keys or, things to start cars, battery chargers and so on and so forth.
That could be,
Have
it could
electricity.
be a shed or something.
Yeah,
Yep.
it could be, I'm just thinking of what I might wanna have.
But a storage shed as opposed to an operating building.
Yeah,
You may need
a
something
building,
to house somebody.
Right.
Let's say the tractor trailer's coming, so we send somebody up there, sometimes we don't even know, but if it's raining and there's inclement weather, it might be good to have like a little booth where an employee
Yeah.
can stay
more,
sheltered.
This would not prohibit
more of
that.
an office.
Right.
This
I
code would not
agree.
prohibit
Yeah,
that.
Just stick a nice-
just a thought that I had
I
with.
just
with
think
all
that-
14
I
sheds.
just think that everything that's permitted in industrial A should be allowed, and it shouldn't just be, if you're doing car storage, then that's all you can do, and you can't have a structure on the property, that's all. So I just don't want,
That
you
would have
know,
to be addressed through site plan review.
okay.
Right.
But you could, like one of those trailers that they put at work sites sometimes that have.
Yeah,
What
I
if they
was
wanna
just
build
gonna
an
suggest that
office?
too, a trailer
cares?
would be someplace to house somebody temporarily.
Yeah.
To store our keys,
Yeah.
Exactly.
because they get lost
Build
all the
away.
time, you know.
Assess, build away.
But I
I'm
just
just
sort of
kidding.
go along with your conversation concerning whether you would allow structures up there.
Yes,
There could be a structure that's for limited purpose.
Right, I'm
is the
not,
way of
I'm
putting
not
it.
sure
Right.
Well,
one of
we can
those
discuss
building
it in
trailers
code.
would
We're gonna
consider
be
a
looking
structure
at it
anyway, cause
again.
it's movable.
Yeah.
Right.
That's my thoughts.
All right, very good. Thank you for
very
the
much.
input.
Nice to see
I'm counting
you,
on
Tony.
the town board to solve our problem.
Been a
Yes.
long time coming, so
Well-
I'm glad we're able to help and
Thank
do
you for
something.
building up
with this.
58.
Thank you.
Tony serves on our downtown committee.
Oh, good.
Yep.
Downtown's still there?
Yes, it is.
All right, at this time, I will open it for town board committee liaison updates.
Why wouldn't we allow that?
I thought we did all that already.
No, the board committee liaison, if anybody would like to report up on their committees.
I'll talk a little bit about environmental committee. We had our third meeting. The downtown committee put together a mission statement that is going to be switched up and put on the website. We spent a long time dividing into 3 subcommittees because the, environmental concerns are just so broad.
How many people do you have on?
I think there's
74.
15, and then, Rob Carpenter comes every time, which is helpful. And they're open meetings, so people can attend. I did study committees, actually, I looked at committees across the country. Looked at, everyone's environmental committees to get ideas as to goals and things that people are focusing on, and most of the committees were about that size. So we worked very hard dividing into 3 subcommittees. We have one subcommittee that will focus on recycling and litter. Another subcommittee that will work on water conservation, which obviously encompasses water quality, water quantity, and I think we're going to be, that group will probably work on the septic systems and pesticides and fertilizers within that. Then we have a climate change committee, and they will also work on energy. Our subcommittees will meet separately, and then in the general meeting, we'll have a session during the general meeting to discuss legislation. The committee's very big on education and educating the community as to, environmental things. And then they're also going to have a newsletter that goes out to the town, I think via email, as to, letting them know things, environmental things, and maybe even highlighting people that are doing great things, businesses that are really doing good things for the environment. The downtown committee, yesterday,
If I could just touch on that, so, just before you go on to the next subject. So, as far as the recycling goes, that's great that you have a subcommittee for the recycling, but I am working with the high school. They gave me their skit yesterday of what they wanna put on Channel 22 to educate people about recycling.
Yeah,
And-
we're not,
Yeah, as liaison to sanitation, I look forward to seeing the subcommittee recommendations to sanitation as to how we can do recycling better. I think it's a great idea.
Right.
Thank you.
and I think I said last time that we're actually taking a field trip to a recycling plant, because Kenny Rothwell is on the committee and he worked there, so he has that set up. On the downtown committee, yesterday, the problem-solving committee met. There was a lot of discussion about dumpsters and the issues with dumpsters in Riverhead. And we're gonna be, speaking to the town about some of these concerns and resolving. The subcommittee has asked a couple times if Riverhead has considered having a garbage district.
Many times.
That was a lot of talk. Some of the problems are that the dumpsters, a lot of the businesses try to maintain their dumpsters, but they have a lot of residential nearby that are ghost dumping in their dumpsters all the time. Diggers has a real problem with it. And then also, I think they feel that a lot of people from the Southampton side actually come in, and dump at our dumpsters because of the proximity.
That might be worth something, though. Southampton garbage, might be something good.
Yeah, because they
I
get
think they
charged over
don't-
there
right.
to get theirs picked up.
Right, that's why.
Absolutely.
They don't
So
have
that's-
pickup,
that's
they don't
been-
have pickup,
Yeah.
so they come into Riverhead. We've talked about putting cameras, because, they need to find out who's doing all of this dumping. I mean, they keep their dumpsters cleaned up like Diggers does, and yet then they come back right out and
Right.
it's
Well,
full again.
restaurants aren't putting mattresses.
Diggers could do a little better.
That's right,
Well,
yeah,
that's the
bags of
problem.
clothes, things like
Yeah.
that.
Sure.
So that's,
It's great,
you know,
Catherine.
a lot of the meeting was about dumpsters, and we did actually do a conference call with Bob Cos, who helped us a little bit. They're looking to find out who has dumpsters downtown. They were looking if there's a list that they could see who has garbage dumpsters
Every
or
bus- every-
because not everybody does, I don't think.
Well, some of the.
They're supposed to, but they share with other,
Right.
sometimes they have little agency agreements with themselves.
I'd like to meet with that particular, because I worked very.
Yes.
Well,
a
we'd
lot
love to have you
about- I
come.
worked very,
Right.
let me bring them up to speed of what we have done in the past and why
Mhm.
things might have fallen apart, but
Well, I think
the whole
things
idea
have-
is the formation
I think
of
things
it.
have fallen apart.
If we, well, right, well, even got exacerbated when we made everybody move things back on their property too, so I think the garbage district is the way to go. and have it
Well, I
included.
think it was right that we moved the garbage out of that corral area,
Oh, no doubt.
except now it's a real challenge,
Right.
because, you know, they don't have space to put the dumpsters
And
back
I
there.
created the one behind Diggers, that spot for that, I've had them all moved over there, and I actually called a meeting with every downtown business owner. And who showed up? Steve Worth and Bruce Tria with his one bag of garbage a week, to this meeting. Nobody else came, and I sent certified letters to all the business owners, so they weren't even interested in creating.
Well, like the Parabel dumpster is right where the people come in and out for the Chamber of Commerce, you know, so that's an issue back there.
But I think that a big problem of it too, because I've been behind Diggers with Steve and took a look at the dumpsters back there.
apartments.
And you have the apartments that are on the corner of Griffin and Main that don't have a
Right.
dumpster, you have
It's
the
the
two office
apartments.
buildings that don't have a dumpster, you have the, East End Disabilities that doesn't have a dumpster, you have all these people that are just, you know, ghost dumping.
Right,
Free
well, that
loading.
was a discussion about the residential, that was what we were talking
I
to.
like that ghost
Bob
dumping. I never heard
via
that before.
the-
That's a great, that's a
Yeah.
great.
It is a good one.
Ghost dumping.
Well, they did, you
Something else
know,
comes
it would
across
be
my mind
nice
when I say
even to
that,
have
but.
cameras
ghost
that
dumping.
they
Well,
could.
we set up some cameras at the dumpster corral behind Parabel for a point in time. But I think this is something that will, with the cameras that we're looking to install downtown as we expand,
Yeah, we
Yeah.
talked about that.
that's gonna help, for
Yeah,
sure.
They were asking me
Yeah.
about that.
And I think it's an ongoing issue. I think, I mean, you know, BID has been involved in coming up with some creative solutions. They have looked to Patchogue, how they do their garbage. There's a couple issues downtown is that, there are separate contractors
Right.
that do the
Exactly
garbage
right.
downtown.
Yeah.
There are people that are non-compliant with their, the businesses that are supposed to have a trash. There's dumpsters located on town property. There's dumpsters that are not screened in. There are dumpsters that people put their trash in and then they don't close their dumpsters up. So it really is an ongoing issue that is in need of a comprehensive solution that can work. So I think there's a couple of committees that are working on the dumpsters. It would be nice to see everybody come together and come up with a plan that is workable and doable and keeps the trash contained and so it's not adding to the blight that can come from that downtown. So I think there's a solution there. I think as as different groups work on it and their voices are heard in there, we'll be able to come up to a solution. But I think as the summer comes up and there's more garbage, it's gonna come to the forefront more, so.
Well, Cherie works with the bid, she's on the bid, and so she brings information from the bid. But, yes, as you said, other issues came up about, we talked before about some dumpsters, you know, the dumpsters are all beat up and get backed into. We talked about some kind of plastic dumpsters and having the proper corral around it and have it locked. So I would be happy to have this group come together with other groups that are working, and I guess Dawn's gonna talk a little bit about the dumpsters.
No,
Or you are
actually,
here for something
I
else?
asked her to
don't know.
come in for something else, but.
Oh, okay,
I'm
cause
sorry.
all of a sudden she came
I'm
in, I was
sorry,
like,
I-
oh.
That's
well,
okay.
just told me to
She
come
works
in.
within the parking
Yeah,
district.
Yeah.
All right, so the dumpsters was a big topic, and then we got into, the blight downtown again. And we're hoping to have something with some sort of, I'm hoping we can have some sort of follow-up
What blight
on
downtown?
the empty buildings
Oh,
that we got
Oh.
into, that code enforcement went into, and we were hoping to have some kind of follow-up on all of that. And they were also asking if the fees for the violations have ever been updated. That was a question that the group had. Because they're very frustrated with the empty buildings downtown, and some of the
Well,
people
we're
have been
close,
working
we're
on
gonna-
committees
we'll knock
for
'em down
over
pretty soon,
15,
yeah.
over
Working
15
hard.
years. I'm talking.
I know. I hear you.
And, now I lost my train of thought.
15
You
years.
said some of the people have been on the committees for 15 years.
Yeah, and this has been an issue, there's certain bad players that have been an issue for many years. So, they were hoping for an update on all of that.
Well, I think, as far as the violations that were issued, they had till the 19th and 22nd of April. They had originally gone into the buildings, that was code enforcement and fire marshal. They issued some notices of violations. There are, you know, some players downtown that have been very proactive. They got their notice of violations, they brought their buildings into compliance. But as we know, there were several buildings that didn't. They have submitted, they fixed some of the violations. Between our code enforcement officers, our fire marshal, and our town attorney's office. They are following through with that. There are some plans in place, but they are staying on top of what they're supposed to be doing and how they are remedying the buildings. There is, one building did submit
Spit it out.
what it is, to demo. I don't know what the request is.
Demo permit.
A demo permit,
Oh,
thank
really?
you. So
For the
one of the
buildings?
buildings did require a demo permit. There
Require-
is another one that potentially may be submitting a demo permit, and whether they'll be executed or come to remedy, but there is a timeline for everything, and they're continuing to follow through it and make sure that they respond. They say they were gonna respond in 2 weeks, they're making sure that response comes in 2 weeks. If not, we are still prepared to take them to court if they're not following through on what they say they're gonna do.
I think that's what they wanna hear, cause as I said, there are people that have been watching this whole scenario just for many years. It's been, I mean, Dawn will attest to this. It's just, you know, how long do we sit and let these few bad players hold up the revitalization of our downtown because they don't care about their buildings?
But as I said before, these buildings had not been entered in 10 years. So we.
Well, they were
Yeah.
shocked at that, actually.
Longer than that, some of them.
So we entered the
They couldn't
buildings.
believe it had been 10 years.
It is hard to believe. But since then, we've been following through on everything, so they started going into the buildings, I think in December or January, around there, working with the owners and getting everybody there. Some of it did take some time because not everybody lives local to get into the buildings. But
Ikeski's all.
it is moving forward and we're not
It
letting
was
up.
November, I thought they did the inspections.
From November through the couple months after
The
that.
inspection reports I saw were dated November.
Okay.
Well, I think our community wants us to really push hard on this issue. So just the other two subcommittees, we have a design, planning subcommittee, and then we have a marketing subcommittee. They're working together, and they're going to be presenting on May 30th at this work session.
Who? I'm sorry. Who's presenting?
People from the downtown committee are gonna be presenting, you know, on, the design planning subcommittee is going to present on May 30th.
Yeah,
Their
and
recommendations for downtown.
can you please give us a list of all your subcommittees and who are on those subcommittees?
The
That would be helpful.
design?
I talk about them every week.
Yeah, I know, but
It's-
Laura had asked out of the Business Advisory Committee, if we were creating subcommittees, she wanted a list as to who was on the subcommittee. So
Sure, I
if you could
can-
provide that for your downtown revitalization committees, that would be good. Thank you.
It's easy to do.
Great.
Anything else?
I have
Catherine?
something.
No,
Done?
that's
Okay.
it. But I see
So-
one of our marketing subcommittees here.
So I called for a meeting yesterday to discuss possible joint partnership with Town of Southold to apply for consolidated funding grant to come up with a strategic mobility plan for the North Fork. And we had representatives, Supervisor Scott Russell was here, we had Councilman Bill Rowland was here, Tim, because he's liaison to planning, I asked him to sit in. We had New York State DOT, we had DPW, we had the ferry companies, we had the Jitney, we had,
I got disinvited.
Yeah, so did I. It sounds a lot like my
No,
Northport trip, the
uninvited.
task
had-
force.
we had
You gotta-
Shelter Island,
you were
we had,
uninvited.
we had Shelter Island, we had several people. It was a great meeting. There were a lot of ideas, like so much to throw into a letter of intent for the intent of the town and the town of Southold to apply for this grant. And that letter of intent is due the end of May. So I wanted to bring it to the board to see if Southold does get back to us and say that they want to apply with us for the CFA for the
And who's drafting that?
strategic mobility plan. Yes, the Community Development Agency would.
With Southold Town, with Dennis Noncaro at Southold.
So,
Dennis was here also.
The CDA?
He's
their
the
economic
yeah.
development person.
Really?
So Scott Russell said that he would get back to us within a couple of days, and Bill Rowland to let us know whether or not they would be interested in applying for this grant application, and then the letter of intent, as I said, has to get in before the end of May.
So the strategic mobility plan would be what, to study the area or?
Nope, we already have plenty of studies. We want to go back and look at the old studies, the Volpe, the seed study, all of those studies, and put forth an implementation plan.
I was gonna say, it's time to
And
implement, we talked about it for a
some of the things, well, that's part of the problem, is getting these old studies off the shelf and looking them and see what dynamics have changed. I mean, we have a lot of apps that are accessible now that weren't accessible in 10 years, such as the Waze and the Google. Reaching out to those people. Gene Smith from New York State said he's in conversations with those people where maybe we can do a subsequent app for the North Fork only that will identify businesses, it'll identify traffic patterns. We talked about when the ferries are busy, when the ferries are slow, to see if we could try and divert some of the heavy flow into the slower times and things of that nature. So it was a very productive meeting, and I mean, people were really excited about the meeting and moving forward with a strategic plan. So we're waiting to hear back, and I just hope that the board will support the Community Development Agency office putting a letter of intent in as
sure.
to the plan.
Sure.
Okay.
I think it's a
All
great
right.
idea.
Anything to ease the traffic, people will
Oh,
be
absolutely.
happy.
That's it.
Absolutely.
Start up, the helicopters have started
Just
coming over
one,
my house.
one thing that was mentioned yesterday that people have to keep in mind, and we know it's very frustrating with the traffic, but no one thing is gonna cure this.
Right.
It's many little approaches that are gonna help chip away at the whole problem. With only 3 roads coming and going,
And they're narrow.
and they're narrow, and
Well, we
Conic
might,
Bay Boulevard
we
wasn't
might
really
need to
made
look
for
at
that kind of
subsequent
traffic.
parking areas and
Yes.
public transportation where people can get off the road and take a train or take a shuttle bus or take
These
a.
are all
whatever.
part of what was discussed yesterday, and
Yes.
I think if you implement some of these, get some of them going,
Paul
and we
Jim
start
Wooten's
seeing
got a
some
little Uber ride, he'll
changes.
give you a ride.
Right.
And I did speak to Scott Russell, because I know you had come to it, Jody. We had the traffic task force back in November, and one of the things that came out of that was that we identified when the bulk of the traffic was coming through that was most disruptive at that time, and that was, you know, basically the end of September through the end of October, a little bit into the beginning of November. And one of the things that came out of that meeting was to have traffic control officers at the different choke points from our town through to Southold Town. I did talk to Scott Russell about that. He said that he would be interested in maybe providing a couple along Sound Avenue till it opens up into the 4 lanes there, to 48 there. We are working with the chief, who has come to the meetings, about having some traffic control specialists come, and he is still working to find out. One of the other issues was to have the traffic control officers trained well. Because that has been one of the ongoing issues. So that is one thing that we're trying to implement for this year, and then to have a strategic plan with that to address all of the other issues, because as you said, it's more than one thing that's gonna need it to be solved, to solve this. So, just an update on that,
Now, when
what
you
we
have these meetings, I'm sorry, you did say who was there, Jody, and I couldn't come to yours because there were already 2 people. Are you guys including the farming community? Because, we talk a lot about traffic at the Ag Advisory.
It was,
Certainly a lot of traffic
really,
involves
yeah, it
agri-teaming.
was intermunicipal
About
for the
choking
first
the
meeting,
traffic.
and then there are several other people that were added to the list that we thought should be brought to the table, including business community. So at the first meeting was municipal, New York State DOT, DPW, Legislator
Right, the
Krupski's
ones that can
office
do
was
something
here.
about it.
It was just brainstorming to think if we all wanted to come together and find a solution. And the biggest people movers on the North Fork, which are the ferry companies and the jitney, and everybody seemed very excited about coming forth with a plan. So, and creating side parking lots and more pickups, and perhaps businesses being, you know, buses pulling into their parking lots, and having a steady flow of the circulation of people.
They did
Well, I think it's
Augie
important for the.
Rochelle was there also, and he's the Suffolk County Economic Development person who really
Yes.
handles the ag.
Augie had some great
stuff.
But I
suggestions.
think it's
So-
important to involve the farming community.
Yeah, they're on the
even,
list for the next one.
you know,
Yeah,
Long Island
only
Farm
take a
Bureau.
tractor on the road between certain hours.
Certainly, they
So
have the
really jams
ability
up there.
to help us adjust the traffic
Oh, they're gonna
too.
have to.
And they're concerned about it just like everybody else. It
Mhm.
affects them just like it affects us.
Yep, they're included, as well as Scott Russell is gonna get back to us with who the business person is, whether it be the chamber, and we will do the same here and include them in the meeting next time. But the first meeting, as I said, was basically for legislators and municipalities.
All right, well, now the government's got it, it'll be another 10 years. Okay, next.
No, because the
stop.
CFA, the letter of intent is due the end of May, and then the grant application is actually due the end of July. So
It's all
it's
well-
important to
all well and
bring,
good.
it's important to bring a lot of these people into, especially the private sector people in, because they can assist with the
Right.
match for
Private
the grant.
sector's the way to go. You give government involved,
Yep.
it's gonna get
Absolutely.
killed.
Okay, good.
Trust me.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, would like to get a first and second to go in executive session for
Oh, really? It's not-
personnel matters, that's it, right? Did you wanna talk to him?
No, I just can't believe it's not 3 o'clock.
I just I have one more committee to report on,
Like
and
last-
that's,
sorry.
Like last week.
and that's the Veterans Advisory Committee. I'm sure you all saw Liz Stokes' letter of resignation. She's got some things, you read her letter, so she's got some things
right,
going
she
on
was
right
on it.
now. She just wants to take a back seat for now. She's still gonna be involved, but just a back seat for now. And the Veterans Advisory Committee is working with the high school to do a wall of honor, which would be a 5-foot by 8-foot flag outside the ROTC office that will have little plaques as far as graduates of Riverhead or non-graduates of Riverhead, because some left school and went into the service, but just students of Riverhead that would
There you
go
go.
on the flag. And this was an idea that came out of the Veterans Advisory Committee after the passing of Deshaun Briggs.
Okay, well, I got a few names from.
Yeah, so there is an application that for the Wall of Honor at the library, and then also on the town, or on the school district's website, and we'll get it up on the town website as well, so.
So they're looking for anybody who has graduated from Riverhead High School that has served, in any branch of the
Yep.
service to fill out the form, give it to the high school, because I know it's very challenging to be able to find everybody that served.
Yeah.
So if you have relatives or you know anybody to just pass the
Yeah.
word along, because it is a lot of work to find out, to
Yeah.
go back in through all the records.
And there's certain proof requirements, like a DD 214 or a VA card, so, you know, but it's a great thing, and it's gonna be a great addition to the high school.
So it's people that graduated from Riverhead.
Or that
There's a
attended
lot.
Riverhead,
There's a lot.
because a lot of them didn't graduate, because they went into the war, they left school and went into the war.
My brother, career Air Force.
Okay,
All right,
thank you, everybody. Have a great day.
all right, anybody else, anything? Okay, hearing nothing, first and second to go in executive session for personnel, matters surrounding a raise for an employee,
Negative.
matters regarding a raise for an employee in 2 departments,
Negative.
contractual matters surrounding the terms of a community benefit agreement, litigation, current litigation in the matter of Oak Hills Association versus Wilson, current litigation in the matter of the town of Riverhead versus Baiting Hollow Farms, LLC, Baiting Hollow Vineyard, LLC, Steve Levine, Sharon Levine, and Richard Rubin.
Wow, so moved.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? So carried.
So,